Hello and welcome to IMHO. Today I'm speaking to Crystal Carter, who needs little introduction as Head of SEO Communications at Wix. Crystal has been in the industry for well over 15 years, and she's worked with clients such as Disney, McDonald's, and Toby. Sorry, Tomy, not Toby. Crystal is a prolific contributor and speaker to the industry. She's widely well respected. And recently, I picked up in the previous Brighton SEO, Crystal actually gave a presentation about SEO for LLM visibility, which is an incredible presentation that everybody should check out. And it was hugely well received, with a huge impact and so well received by the industry. So it's going to be really interesting to pick through where we are right now and get Crystal to offer her valued opinion. So, Crystal, I'm going to kick over to you. In your opinion, what do you think about the current state of search, and especially with the influence of AI, and where do you think it's all going right now?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on the show, Shelley. This is a great topic, and I think we're all sort of on the edge of our seat about this. This is probably the most exciting, dynamic time in SEO that we've seen. It's certainly in the time that I've been working in this space. And I think it's because we're not only seeing a change in SERP features or a change in the way that websites are being served on Google, we're seeing challenges to Google, and we're seeing challenges to the idea of search as we know it. You mentioned my Brighton SEO talk, and I did that talk twice in the autumn. First at Brighton SEO in UK, and then in November at Brighton SEO in the US. And I was saying that ChatGPT was the biggest LLM, and it still is. And at that time, it was about 87% of LLM traffic, and now today it's about 77% of LLM traffic because we've got DeepSeek, which is a new player that's shown up. So the space is developing really, really rapidly. But also, we're starting to see that it's starting to encroach a little bit on Google traffic. So lots of people are saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be looking at AI search. It's not worth it. It doesn't matter yet." Like, and AI SEO is the same as SEO, and I disagree. um, so I disagree. I do not think that they're the same. And people are saying, "Oh, you can't do anything." And I'm like, "Well, I have seen impact. I've set a hypothesis, implemented the changes, and seen the response on a couple of different occasions using a couple of different tactics that I laid out in the article that you mentioned, which is on the Wix Studio SEO Learning Hub." Um, and so it is different. It is different. But also I think it's important is that like the goal is different. So when I talk about this, I very often talk about brand visibility. And that's because brand visibility is also part of it. So if your brand is mentioned, even if there isn't a link to your brand, that's still a win in an LLM search, for instance. And so that's something that's changing the way we're searching. And I think that when I hear people saying, "Oh, we don't need to worry about LLM search right now. Oh, just do regular SEO," I feel like it's short-sighted. In February 2024, a year ago, LLM search, I just pulled these numbers, so it's not like I know these off the top of my head, but I just pulled these numbers for a different project. LLM search was coming in at around 330 million searches, and Google was pulling in around 79 billion searches. And today, in February 2025, according to SimilarWeb, Google is down actually from 79 billion searches to 76 billion searches in February 2025. And LLM search, a combination of ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Perplexity, Gemini, Copilot, and Claude, is coming in at 4.9 billion, right? So that's a
Yeah.
huge jump from for LLM search, and we're seeing some decline in Google search. Now imagine what that will look like in a year from now.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned about the figures because I actually, just before we spoke, I pulled the similar web for ChatGPT in February 25, and they're up to 2.9 billion visits. Now, I noticed in your article that you'd noted in August they were at 2.6 billion. So they're obviously increasing this, the search uptake is increasing. Gartner's predicting a 25% drop in search engine use by next year. I'm already seeing a huge drop in clients for organic clicks. You know, is it only going to go one way for Google? I mean, do you think that we are now going to have to prioritize discovery engines like ChatGPT and Perplexity? Or are we going to have to split ourselves? Do you think we'll need to pick one or split ourselves? Are we going to have to cover all bases?
I mean, one of the things that's important is, people are saying, "Oh, it's the same." It's like it's not the same. There are definitely overlaps though, right? So there's definitely overlaps between like classic SEO and LLM optimization or generative search optimization. There are definitely overlaps. Indexing is valuable, right? Making sure that it's rendered is value, that you can render things as valuable. Content marketing and the way that you're organizing the content on your page, because LLMs read the words on your page, like that's really valuable as well. And thinking about your citations, thinking about your backlinks and things. These are all valuable, and they're all contribute to them. But in the same way that you don't do the exact same SEO playbook for an e-commerce website as you would for a
Yeah,
lead gen website,
yeah,
you would have a different playbook if your goal is to push your visibility on LLMs. So they're not exactly the same. They're not out of the ballpark, but you do need to have a specific tactic. Um, what I would say in terms of SEOs and our relationship with Google, one of the things that I think is critical to pay attention to is that Google is putting a lot of energy into their AI tooling. So not only are they putting a lot of energy into AI overviews, but they've also launched that like AI only search, and they
yeah.
also have put a lot of energy into Gemini. So in the time that we've seen a lot of growth of use of Gemini as well. And I think that that will only become more so as it gets better. So Gemini has, they've included it in or they've included Gemini as part of like Google for Work, like or and if you've got the Google Workspace space, and like I use it and it's great. Like it's fantastic. And I think that as we see more of that, and as these tools become more ingrained, we'll see that we'll see that the uptake becomes more acute and becomes higher. And I think that where SEOs need to think about it is that like, the visibility game is different. And I think that we will have to focus our attention on the things that like genuinely matter to business outcomes, rather than some of the for lack of a better word, vanity metrics. Like I've seen clients over the years where they're like, "Oh, our clicks went down." I was like, "Yeah, but they were to nothing. They were to the tag pages on your website. So yeah, they went down because I got rid of all those tag pages that were nothing. They were nothing pages." So I think that I think we need to concentrate on like what actually matters, and really make sure that we're providing good value, and supporting people on lots of different channels, not just from Google.
Just one last question, just for us to quickly talk about before the end. But yeah, deep search, obviously the introduction of deep search. I was reading about this last night, and the fact that it can offer PhD level research, um, and I was thinking about what impact is this actually going to have on information content marketing, which is obviously been a huge part of SEO for the last few years. What are brands going to do now that everybody is going to have the same access to this level of research and potentially content production? How are brands going to stand out against that? How will that impact?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things to think about with this. First of all, like I'm going to tell you a little anecdote. I play the guitar, but not very well. And I play cowboy chords, right? So I get a G and I go brum, and I hit the A and I go brum, and I hit the D and I go brum, and that's all I can do. That's what I can do. It's enough for me to like, to sing around the campfire and to amuse myself, and that sort of thing. If you gave me a $10,000 guitar, if you gave me, a Fender Stratocaster, if you gave me Lenny Kravitz's guitar right now, I would still play those cowboy chords because that's all I got. Okay. So I think that just because people have the tools doesn't necessarily mean that they're able to actually get value out of them. And I think that some people will, of course, but I think most people, like I've used deep research and it's great. It's slow. It's super slow.
Yeah.
And also it gives you so much information in one go that and it's not all that, and I think it gives you so much information in one go. At the moment, it's very tricky to unpick which things are correct
Mm.
from it. And even if you ask it a super simple question, it will give you this full spew of information.
Yeah.
And I think that is still tricky. So I think that when we think about content for the next phase of, of basically like information management, which is really what we're thinking about, that when we think about the next phase, I think it's important to realize that the goal of content will be different, right? So in that deep research space, if you have a brand and you have not published any deep research, you have not published, like, let's say you're a consultancy brand, right? Let's say you do consulting on, I don't know, engineering bridges or something, right? And you've never published anything on your website that talks about engineering or bridges or architecture or whatever. You've never published
Mm.
anything. Guess what? You won't be mentioned in that deep research,
Yeah.
right? So people that are interested in that, people that need someone to build them a bridge or whatever, they're not going to find you because you never wrote anything. Whereas if they're doing research on, like, do we need this kind of bridge or that kind of bridge or da 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 da, and they see these other folks who are being mentioned as these citations, they will follow up with those folks because they know those folks to be knowledgeable and to be expert and to have information. So if you have content, if you're not making content, even if it doesn't drive a click, if you're not making content, you will not be mentioned by those
Mm.
tools. So the goal of content is different. And furthermore, if you're not making content that talks about yourself correctly,
Yeah.
then other people might make content that doesn't talk about you correctly.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then the sum of the content that's on the web, the sum of the content that forms part of the training data will be biased in the wrong direction. So the goal of your content will have to shift. Part of it will become reputation management. Part of
Mm.
it will become making sure that it's accurate, that information about its of you is accurate. So and I've recently done a webinar on some of these tools that are used to manage to like monitor your LLM visibility. And one of the things I find is that very often, like, people the many of the references to our brand are from our brand, right? So when we're
Mhm.
looking at some of these things, many of the references to about our brand are from our brand because we talk about ourselves on our website. And if you are a brand that's not talking about yourself on your website, if you're a brand that doesn't have, KBs, that doesn't have like a corpus of knowledge, then that makes it very tricky for the LLMs to surface that information about you. Furthermore, I think that, like, with the deep research thing, I think it's great, it's wonderful, but I think that there's still value in shaping a narrative in shaping a narrative from a human perspective. So, case in point, I don't listen to Spotify. I don't like their algorithms, right? If I'm completely honest. If I put on George Michael, I was having a George Michael appreciation day today. Love George. If I put on George Michael on Spotify, they'll play me this algorithm and I don't like it. And I don't like having to push the thumbs down button every second. And it disrupts my whole flow. So I listen to SoundCloud, where there's a DJ who put together a 1 hour mixtape of stuff that I like, and I'll just listen to that whole mixtape over and over again. And I think that it's very, very similar. I think that, like, I we talked about my deck that I did for Brighton SEO. It was
Yeah.
Beyonce themed. Why? Because I like it and because it helps me tell the story better,
Hmm.
right? And helps me to bring people along that journey. And I think there's still value in storytelling from a human perspective, potentially with AI augmentation, potentially with AI support. Um, but I think that that's important as well. So I don't think it will replace. I think it will potentially help. And so I've used it to sort of distill, like, the different information and stuff, and it can be useful. But I think that, there's still a skill in curating information,
Yeah.
storytelling,
Yeah.
and adding value for brands.
Well, Crystal, thankfully, hopefully, your job as head of communications and my job as content strategist and similar-ish role at SEJ will mean that we both will keep our jobs for the foreseeable future.
Fingers
Um,
crossed.
so it's been fantastic to speak to you, and thank you so much for offering your humble opinion. And I hope to catch up with you soon, Crystal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.